Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another JLC Media event. We're so pleased and happy that you took some time to be with us. Today is the second installment of the series on the miracle of resiliency. So we're going to talk about resiliency today. But before I jump into the content, let me make sure you know who's with us right now. I think you're getting used to the gang, but I'll let each of them introduce themselves. And today I'm going to ask them to tell me what was their biggest surprise in the last week? So tell us who you are. What was your biggest surprise in the last week?
Don't all jump at once, right? All right, I'll go.
It really wasn't that hard.
But notice everybody's thinking, well, what the hell happened this week? I can't quite remember. So I'll go. Colleen Sullivan. I'm working with the Jorgensen Learning Center for how many dog years, Ray? It's been, I always say 12 years, something of that nature. It's just been an honor and a privilege, and I'm so grateful to be working with the team. And as I think back as a surprise, what surprised me this week was my son Connor. Mentioned him many times. He's a freshman at Montana State University, and he called me because he needs to drop a class. So I think I was very surprised because all the way along, I hear crickets. How's everything going? Thumbs up. How's everything going? And I think, I don't know if it was because of the influx of snow or what happened over there at MSU, but I just was really surprised that already he needs to drop a class. So that was my biggest surprise last week.
That's great, Colleen. Thank you. And they come up in interesting ways. I've done this before, and it's interesting. If I say, what's your biggest surprise yesterday? People respond right away. If I go last week, they're like, oh, wait a minute. They got to really think about this a little bit. So who'd like to go next? Sure.
So I'll take a stab at it. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vince Starks, and I guess I'm the baby of this group. I've been with JLC a little under a year. I retired from the Navy after 30 years of service, and this platform just gives me an opportunity to stay connected intellectually. So my biggest surprise last year is this is the time of year where students in high school are all applying for colleges and universities and waiting on acceptance letters. And in my household, my daughter is applying to about 6 universities, and she had her heart set on a group of universities in Japan, in Tokyo, Japan. And she received her first rejection letter last week. And so that was probably one of our first conversations of what it really feels like to manage disappointment. So things don't fall quite short. And so that was a surprise. I was surprised they turned her down. But I told her, hey, man, you got more things to look forward to in the future. And so with that, I'm in.
Welcome, welcome. All right, Jules.
Hi, I'm Dr. Julie B. Wise. I've been with the Jorgensen Learning Center for 3 years now and love every single minute. And I'm grateful that all of you get a chance to listen in on our conversations because I learn something every time we engage with each other. The thing that surprised me last week was I thought I was doing really well with the quarantine, and we know there were certain breakdowns that I had, but for the most part, I thought I was dealing with it pretty well and everything was good. Well, last week I got out 4 times. 4 times I got out of the house. I went to the movies. I got my nails done for the first time since June. I went out to dinner. And I got my COVID vaccine. So I got out of the house 4 times, and it was like heaven. I was walking on air. I was bouncing around. Like, I was really happy. And they were like, what's going on with you, Julie? And I'm like, I got out of the house. And it was the thing that surprised me was how much I was really struggling on a daily basis. And I didn't realize it, and how getting out of the house really energizes me. And I'm in.
Welcome. And I'm telling you, these 3 stories will play forward in this whole work on resiliency. Because remember, the definition of resilient is the ability to leap back into play, get back into action. And each of these stories have some edge to getting back into action. My biggest surprise, which caused me to have to get back into action in the last week, was everybody I know has had their shots, COVID-19, coronavirus shot. And I haven't. And so I called my doctor, and she told me I wasn't high risk. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Just look at me.
You're 65 too, right?
He does have your file, right?
This is ridiculous, and so anyway, that was for me a pretty good surprise. And I had to leap back into the fray and say, okay, I'll go when I'm scheduled. Thank you. I'm in. Notice, folks, we always practice the same techniques when we come together as a team to check in with almost anything. It's an effort to get voices in the room and get us in conversation. So this is the second one we've thought about anyway around resiliency. And the first one we did was kind of an overview. We all know kind of what it means to us. This team was wonderful talking about resiliency from their vantage point. So let me set the stage, and then I'm going to ask them a question or two that will help build our capabilities to do this. Things happen sometimes that are really positive and good. And depending upon our mental models and our self-talk and the narrative that we've created inside of ourselves, we very often just brush those away, don't think about them. It was good. Sure, I expected I worked really hard. I'm glad it was good. Or, even when you receive a compliment, as we talked about last time, we kind of thank you. So today we're going to talk about how you can actually increase the resiliency muscle. You can get stronger in resiliency by focusing on things that go well. And again, typical development in our world is we don't focus on things that go well. We have a tendency to be really clear about how we've screwed something up, but focusing on what we've done well, not so much. We will develop a common understanding today about the importance of recognizing good things, good events, positive events, so our coping resiliency strength grows. At the end of this, each of you will become personally able to recognize when something really positive happens, that there's a method to look at that positive thing in a conversation or in a meeting and respond to it in a way that we just get stronger. Our resiliency muscle gets stronger. Julie, what are you hearing me say? What are you thinking?
I hear you saying that we're going to be talking about resiliency, and the focus is on things that go well, and how, as we recognize the things that go well, then we can trust that those things could possibly happen again when things go bad.
That's really good. And there's an enhancement piece in this where we have to watch our own personal narrative. We have that kind of negative propensity. Well, let me tell you what's wrong. Here's the problems I'm facing. And sometimes when we have a conversation or a meeting and it goes really well, we don't really think about it effectively. We just move on. Let's go to the next thing. Colleen, what are you thinking?
Well, I think what resonated with me is the fact that resiliency can be a muscle that we intentionally focus on and develop, right? So I thought about my big muscles and that I can, how quickly. So that was the first piece. And the second piece is how quickly we go to a space of negativity. So, and we always say what you focus on grows. So I guess I'm looking forward to learning more about how to intentionally focus on the positive piece. And then the other piece was, how can I recognize when I am in that negative space and perhaps begin to focus and develop my capabilities so I can pivot to a more positive space.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, it is truly about pivoting. It's like awareness is everything. Yeah. We have to be able to be aware of my own thinking and how I see, and what I see is positive, you might see not so much. So I want to make sure that we can talk this through in a way that the practice I'm going to share with you, which you guys already know the practice, to use the practice very intentionally with the folks that we work with. And those of you that are listening in, I think you're going to love this. I don't think we've played it out completely before, but I will do that process with you in a few moments. I think you're going to really like it. Vince, what were you hearing, thinking?
So in addition to what my colleague said, what really stuck out with me or stood out was the effort to be very intentional in the way that you understand where you are as an individual, how you show up. And because of the way that you show up, and then recognizing the importance of resiliency and recognition, you can do great things. You can really, really influence and have real positive outcomes. So I'm excited, as my colleagues, man, to kind of get into this and let's talk about it a little bit and see where it takes us.
Yeah. We will talk about it. And I like the way you characterize that also, this sensibility of developing my capability. We've chatted about this before. Disciplined practice produces growth, not perfection. And I so often I run into people, if I really work on this, I'll be perfect at it. Well, we still get to be human. So disciplined practice produces growth and some development. So we will be trying to our best to talk about that resiliency muscle. So let's shift now into the very first big point. So I want you guys to think about the last conversation you were in that really went well, or the last meeting you were in that really went well. Tell me about the intention of that meeting and why it went so well. Who'd like to start?
Okay, sure, I'll start. So I do a variety of things in my new life. And one of them is I volunteer my time and efforts with a group of parents who are focused on academic education for kids in the area that I live. And so over a period of time, they learned that I have fairly good organizational skills. So now they've asked me to kind of chair and lead their executive steering committee meetings.
Good for you.
And it has been a journey. And just trying to get this group of parents with no other formal connection other than we have kids in the same school system to really get together and to be able to develop an atmosphere of trust and open dialogue and communication about the goals that we want to set, our outcomes, and then how do we get there together. So most recently, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the feedback after that meeting was extremely positive from that group. I've been working on conversational leadership guidelines and techniques. Wow. Group without telling them that's what we're doing. And just the feedback has been
kind of sneaky about it, right?
Yeah, well, but the dialogue, the atmosphere of trust, the open communication, getting the voices in the room and developing a common understanding of our goals has been really positive. And just to get that feedback directly from the members over how much they enjoy the experience has been was very positive. That's something that's really happened within the last week or so for me.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Can one of you two build on that?
Sure, definitely. So this is Julie, and I just had a coaching session today with a client. And when you're in a coaching session, the coach is responsible for listening presently what the person is saying, what the client's saying, but then maybe what's possibly underneath or any sort of mental models that may be constricting them. And in this case, the person was self-talk was saying, I want to buy a house, I want to buy a car, but I'm not really good with money. And I'm not really, I need to organize and this, that, and the other thing. And the more she was talking, the more it occurred to me that maybe this isn't true, that you're not organized with money, because it really sounds like you actually know where all of your money is and that you've been saving it and that sort of thing. And so it's always a risk for a coach to put that out there, to say, what if it wasn't true that you're not good with money? What if you are good with money? What would that look like? And as they describe what it would look like if they were good at money, they realize, wait a minute, I actually am good at money. So the conversation went well, but it is always a risk when you are addressing mental models and trying to get clear as to whether that's true or not.
I love it. I love it. And see, both of you have given me what I needed for part 2 of this conversation today. And after Colleen gives a little bit of her development on what both of you have said, we're going to use both of those experiences to become more specific about what particular parts of those conversations made them so positive and so useful. That's really good. Colleen, you got one?
Sure. I think mine, reflecting back, was on, yesterday on a team meeting that we had. And I think that many people use the term collaboration, and yet do they truly collaborate, or do they bring their own thinking forward and then say, what do you think about this? And then people start to judge or weigh in. And I think one of the things and this is on our agenda item, we were talking about scheduling, right? How are we going to schedule our clients on executive coaching? And so I had a conversation with one of our other team members named Christy, brought it forward to the rest of the team. So this is my thinking. What do you guys think? Could you weigh in on your thoughts? And boy, did that really get the conversation going. It didn't take long. Julie, you had some great feedback. Joe, our other teammate, had some great feedback from that conversation because it was truly collaborative. I was not locked onto my way. It wasn't my way or the highway. It was, this is my best thinking. What do you guys think? We intentionally created the space. We invited people in. I welcomed their perspective, recognizing that those revisions were spot on to make it truly easier. And I believe in that, maybe it was 3 minutes, Julie. It truly was a quick, collaborative, brief conversation where we were like, right on, let's try this process and roll with it. If we need to revise and refine moving forward, happy day. But we quickly came through that short collaborative conversation to a conclusion, and we had created the best possible process. And I think that felt really good. And the feedback, Julie, you were really happy with that. So just a quick example of how to hold an intentional, truly collaborative conversation is different than me deciding what needs to be done.
Very nice. Julie, do you see that the same or differently?
Yes, I agree with Colleen. And you could feel that she wasn't out to say this is the best way, but really this is my first approximation. And, Colleen knows I'm not very good with a blank page. So I appreciate her willingness to think through it first and then giving me space to add to it.
Yeah, I don't know why the two PhDs in the conversation here need headings, but I've always needed headings. I don't know what to write. Give me a heading or write something. So that's really good. Thank you so much. Vince, how about you? Do you see that similarly? Any difference?
Well, so for me, I missed the staff meeting yesterday. But I saw the cliff notes. So I was able to go back and look at some of the dialogue and interaction between my colleagues, and I understand instantly what transpired. I saw the collaboration, and I had immediate buy-in to saying, yes, let's buy into the process, because I could feel the collaboration, the openness, and I know that the final product came from just great open collaborative thinking. And so as a part of the team, I'm all on board with that. So it was very easy for me to see that, and I could see exactly how that transpired.
Oh, that's really excellent. And there's its piece of, I can read the Cliff Notes, and because of the construction of that particular agenda item, it felt to you like it was useful and collaborative. So let me kind of hold you there for a minute. And I'm going to have Colleen, I'm going to kind of probe a little bit about that particular part of the agenda. Okay, Colleen? And then you guys need to be listening for the intention. And then I'm going to shift into an after action review about a positive experience. What I'm going to do here is show you that when we have a good meeting like that, we have a tendency not to think about it again. And it goes into the background. Good, it went well, good, let's move on. What's next? It's almost like, what's next? If we can just stop and think about it in the context of an after action review, we begin to build our resiliency muscle. So the intention of that particular piece in your mind, Colleen, was what?
The intention of that particular agenda item was to develop a process of scheduling new executive coaching clients. So each of us had a common understanding of what was the process. So at the end of that agenda item, each of us could execute on this new process seamlessly to ensure that our clients got the information they needed quickly, and we could schedule them quickly.
So I'm going to assume that the two of you, I'm talking about Vince and Julie, really got that. That was the intention. Did anyone have a different intention, or does that resonate positively with you?
That's right on.
Yes?
I agree.
So stay there with me for a minute. What did Colleen do? Now, I don't want Colleen to tell me. Vince, you weren't there. You read the Cliff Notes, but
right.
Julie, one of you been?
So we had talked about how we were going to look at approaching, future clients, and just kind of organize that work a little bit better. And Colleen agreed to kind of, take a stab at putting some general thoughts together. and having a discussion at the meeting. I was unable to attend the meeting. And so I saw this kind of collection of thoughts, and then that went out to the group for, interpretations, and there was feedback and some dialogue, and the final product came out of it. And so again, I understood the intent going into the meeting. And so when the actual things happened, I clearly understood what transpired because of the way that we communicate. We have a very open group, and we practice this methodology all the time. And so it was very clear what transpired, and the end result was a great collaboration.
As long as you don't annoy me, it's very clear. As soon as I get annoyed and I stop talking about this. But anyway, so Julie, how about you? What you got the intention and you felt good about that. Tell me more.
Mm-hmm. So there were a few things that Colleen did that helped us all be heard. So she would ask, let's say she asked me what my feedback was. And then after I was finished, she sort of closed the loop and, said, so you're saying this is what would be helpful to you? Because there was this possibility of Christy doing the scheduling. And I said, well, if Christy does the scheduling, then I've got to take my other events and put them on there. And that might limit the process. And so I gave some of my limitations and some of the strengths that were already discussed. And then after I felt like I was heard, she then shifted to Joe. And Joe shared his ideas. And then she, again, repeated back. So I hear you saying, is this correct? And then together, now that we've heard everybody's ideas, we picked out which ones were the strengths for all of us that would work so that we could have one similar system or process. Right. And then I think the best thing that Colleen did was she put it in writing and sent it out for everyone to feedback one more time so that we were all read it and we were all clear. And it wasn't just discussed about and moved on, but we now have it black and white that if we forget what we're supposed to do, we can pull that out and it's right there and we all can follow that.
So those of you that are listening to us, I want you to really notice how strong they have begun this after action review. After action reviews are not about content. After action reviews are about the process we used to get to an outcome that we wanted. And that was the design of how we're going to schedule, right? So notice all I did here was clarify with my 3 friends and colleagues what was the intention, what it was, some of the things that Colleen did that were useful. Colleen, do you have anything else you remember that you did that you said, wow, that was a useful thing that I did during this conversation?
No, I think Julie, did a great job of kind of outlining that, as did Vince. And I think when I look back on collaborative conversations, I think the key piece is inviting feedback. That helps people feel connected and relevant, because anytime you're designing a process, right? We always say that quality lives where the process meets the end user. Here I am creating a process in a vacuum going, oh, well, this is probably good. That's my thinking. That's not a collaborative conversation. So I think as a meeting leader, ensuring that when I bring that forward, to not be attached to some sort of damn process that's just because it's mine. It's woohoo, it's awesome. Right, yeah. How do I know if it's going to work until I truly invite my colleagues in, because they're also executing on the process. So I think it was a mindset of, this is my thinking. It's one way, not the only way. Let me have my compadres weigh in, because I want a quality process. And I always focus on the outcome, quality process. I don't care if it's my idea, Vince's idea, or Julie's idea, but let's ensure that the process is a collaborative conversation, so it'll be more effective than just Colleen deciding in a vacuum.
Yeah, so you said a whole bunch of things in there, and you didn't pick up, for whatever reason, probably on purpose, what Julie said. One of the things you did that made her feel comfortable was to acknowledge her thinking that she gave to you and then expanded on it, or ask somebody else what they were thinking. This ability to acknowledge and respond respectfully is in part of any meeting process, any conversation process. It is critical. It builds safely dangerous space, lets people feel heard, really critical. So notice what we did, ladies and gentlemen that are listening. We got an intention on the table, and we said, what did Colleen do? Okay, now watch. What did you learn? And Vince, I love your take on this as reading the cliff notes, okay? But I'm going to start with Colleen and Julie. What did you learn about that process yesterday?
I'll start. The thing that I learned is that everyone had a different process that worked for them. And we all needed to be flexible and be willing to maybe give up a little bit of this and adjust to someone else. So I learned that my colleagues are willing to take my feedback and work together for a common goal.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a great learning. And I want you to notice, ladies and gentlemen listening, when we say feedback among ourselves, it is not the typical thing that happens when the boss calls me and says, Ray, I want to give you some feedback. That usually is not a good thing. That's usually somebody's coming to get me about something. We are actually talking about feedback as a causal loop. We actually feed back to the person what we heard them say and how it landed on us. That is powerful stuff that's unfolding there. So, Colleen, what did you learn?
I think that a learning or a good reminder is how to show up in a conversation when you're bringing forward your thinking. Right?
Yeah.
As Vince said, I kind of created, and Julie mentioned, I kind of created this process with one team member, and then I was presenting it to everyone. And I think it's really important not to confuse the conversation about changing an idea and taking it personally. They were saying, well, wait a minute, we could do this and this. And I think when you show up, reminding oneself that we're discussing and the outcome we're looking to achieve is a quality process. It doesn't matter if it's my idea or somebody else's. And it doesn't matter if they said, hey, Colleen, I don't think so. Let's start from scratch. How I react and respond is really probably going to impact that the space of collaboration. So the more intentionally I can go in and suspend my certainty over the fact that it's my idea or no ideas and create that space for collaboration is really critically important.
Superior learning, Colleen. And I will say that you actually added this in your previous comments, but it rose up again now in slightly different language. When Dr. Deming was teaching me about total quality, Colleen used a phrase of his, which is the following: quality is created at the last point where the system touches the customer or user. Colleen created a process that touched the team, and quality was created in that collaborative process. That is just what you learned and said to us so far is great. Vince, talk to me a little bit, some learnings, even just listening to them talk about what happened yesterday. I'm sure some stuff is popping around in there.
Yeah, man, this is a dangerously safe space. So, what really stood out for me, man, was the real collaboration of this team. Here's why. Most people don't know this. There was a lot of communication with Christy on this process, this methodology. And within our group and our team, Christy is a person in the company that does the least amount of this aspect of the work. We rarely interact with her with this type of work. And so to bring her thoughts and ideas in to kind of help lead this question that came up and this problem that we had to solve and incorporate the idea and the concepts, and then to have her put her shared feedback on this new process design that we're going to try, that is something that was incredibly special to me. And that just goes at the heart of, getting all voices on the table and real collaboration to get to ultimate outcomes. And so,
that's really good.
It was just impressive to have her come in and to bring that perspective and to bring that into the mix.
What you're doing there is teaching us, Vince, that you don't have to know the work as long as somebody's practicing it, like you are with your group of parents that you're working with. You're practicing the work with them and they're learning it going forward. So this is about resiliency and building the resiliency muscle from a positive event. This was a positive event, and I did the simplest thing called an after-action review. What was your intention, Colleen? What did you do? And everybody weighed in on what you did. What did we learn? And then the last part of the after-action review, is there anything you would do differently next time? Is there anything you would invite yourself to do differently as a participant, or you, Colleen, as a person leading that agenda item? Is there anything you would have done differently? Please tell me.
One of the things I think that I would have done differently is I spent a lot of time in creating this process in my own personal vacuum. So I thought about it, and I wrote about it, and I wrote about it. And I think looking back, I didn't need to spend that much time. All I need to do is think it through, gather my thoughts, and then offer it to the team. So I think sometimes when we talk about collaboration, it's not creating and then saying, what do you guys think about this? It's truly in a dialogue where everybody can weigh in. That's a true collaborative environment.
Yeah, so coping and resiliency are connected. And here you are thinking about, did I cope well with a charge that I created with the team about something we wanted to do? And next time, I'll try not to drive myself crazy ahead of time. Because the collaborators are out there, right? Everybody, they're all willing out.
And then people go, well, it's not perfect. It's not done. I don't know. I don't want Vince to look at it because I'm afraid he's going to look at it and tell me, well, that sucks, Colleen, oh my God. So I think all of those pieces, when we talk about, looking at the positive piece, it's like, and Julie, you've mentioned this before in some of your other conversations and podcasts. It's like, you don't have to have all the answers. That's not what really it's all about. It's how do we create the space where everyone else can weigh in so we have a positive outcome.
That's great. So since she called you out on it, Jules, what are you thinking right now? What might we do differently next time to be even better?
So I'm really personally reflecting on the way that I show up, because oftentimes someone will lay something out on the table and it's like, you obviously didn't consider me, and this isn't going to work for me. And, you're always making the decisions, and I huff and a puff and and then I go and I complain to everybody. And so I stayed in a space of, okay, what Colleen said does not work for me, but I need to communicate that does not work for me, in a space of possibility versus shutting somebody down. And I feel, hopefully Colleen felt that I had a little bit gentler of words maybe. And that's definitely something that I need to continue to practice to do differently when someone lays an idea on the table.
Now look how nice that is, though, that ability to recognize I may have some angst about this, and how do I be vulnerable enough, right, to surface that? Where is Brene? Be vulnerable enough to surface my worry or concern so I can hear it reflected back at me. That is really magnificent. Vince, what should I do differently next time?
What I should do differently next time, man, is show up for the damn meeting.
That would be good.
With that aside, I would say that what I do think is special about the way that we collaborate and the way that we create space, we all have our personalities, man, and we come with that. It's kind of inherently who we are, and understanding ourselves. So Julie is a fairly direct communicator within our group. I probably I wear my expressions on my face. The way I'm feeling is real not hard to figure that out on video. And Colleen is a lot of the brains behind the outfit. She creates a lot of balance, and you're the wizard, you're the grandpa. So I think that it's important, man, to do just what Julie said, just, acknowledging how you show up and understanding that, but also being honest to your truth. Because I think that when that comes out, when Julie expresses, her thoughts about something, it gives me a moment of pause and go, well, hey, let me consider her thoughts and feelings. Tell me more. And Colleen was putting her logic out, it makes it all of our honesty in that space that we create to just be authentic is what's important. So I wouldn't change a thing with respect to that. I'll just do a better job of being at the next meeting on time. And I'm out.
I love you, Vince. Notice this piece, though, ladies and gentlemen that are listening. What we've done is an after action review. It's a simple process. We tend not to do it when we have a very good outcome or a very good conversation or a very good meeting. We move on to the next one. And if we do an AAR, it's usually about something that didn't work, something that didn't go the way we thought, So in building this capability to be truly resilient is building that muscle around things that went really, really well. That was the whole focus of this. And look how nicely they played into that space. So This is a chance for each of you to say, if there was one thing that you would want the listeners to know and be able to do as a result of this conversation, what would that be? What would that one thing be? Boy, I really wish all of you that are listening, because they couldn't see the meeting, they could only hear about the aftermath. So in terms of building this resiliency muscle, what is one thing you would like each of the listeners to know, and really we're speaking to ourselves here, to know and be able to do moving forward? Who'd like to start?
I'll start. So the one thing I want everyone to know and be able to do is to listen to what the person's saying and then repeat back to them, mirror to them. Just summarize what you think you're hearing instead of shifting right into judgment. That's a great idea. No, that won't work. But just simply repeating back. So you're saying this, and to make sure it's a completely different way to communicate and keeps the conversation going. And I'm out.
That's lovely. That's really lovely. Thank you. Colleen?
Yeah, I'll speak to, I think, to be able to focus on positive things takes a lot of self-awareness and recognition of when you're diving down that hole of, oh, I'm not good enough. I ought to have done it this way. Damn, right? And focusing on the negative pieces. Yeah. So I will say that my invitation to each person is to really enhance their self-awareness. So then they recognize and can be more intentional about focusing on the positives to enhance their resiliency. And I'm out.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. There's such strength in our ability right now to reflect on, we showed you a simple way to have focus on things that are going well, right? And using that simple after action review is just powerful. Vince, what would you like the listeners to know and be able to do?
Yeah, so when I listen to my colleagues, I hear a lot of reflection on self and how you look at your individual actions. And so I think it's, from my perspective, I want people to walk away and realize the importance of recognition for the team. Because what we do is really about, both individual success, but it's also about team success. And it's important to recognize the team, not the volume, and not the complexity of the recognition, but the simple act of recognition and the importance of that action for the team. And with that, I'm out.
That's beautiful. There's a whole piece here that I'm going to ask everyone that's listening. And if you're driving, please don't do this. But if you're by yourself and you have a piece of paper, take 5 minutes when this event is over and write down some of your own personal takeaways. We have a member of our team that uses interesting metaphors. And he always says, reflection is the engine of change. And so I like that. I'm happy with that. Personally, I'm trying to do less and less mechanical and military and athletic metaphors, but he loves that one. And I love it too, because I love him. So there's a chance for you to learn something yourself here as you reflect on what occurred. Now, we did add a little feature to the end of our podcast. So I'm going to do it right now. And this has to be just what pops in your head. You ready? What is an ordinary moment in the last couple of days, an ordinary moment that gave you joy?
Eating chocolate-covered strawberries.
Oh, I love it. Valentine's Day, right?
Yep.
I had scotch and a cigar.
Scotch and a cigar. I am so wishing you were here right now. Colleen.
Walking with my husband by the river.
See, there are little things that if we don't take a moment and just reflect on it, that give us such peace and joy. So, and we wish all of you peace and joy and a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day, week, or moment that you're involved in. And as I said, do not try and ride in the car, but if you get a minute, stop the vehicle or go someplace and just give yourself a minute to reflect and think about what you took from this little podcast that we just did. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ray. Thank you so much for being part of JLC Media today. We look forward to seeing you again in the future. You can find us at www.gojlc.com. Thank you so much, gang, for being with us today. Bye.
Sincerest thanks for listening to this episode of the Everyday Leadership Conversations podcast. The Jorgensen Learning Center offers a variety of programs for individuals and organizations to enhance their communication and leadership skills. To find out more about programs and upcoming webinars, check out our events page at gojlc.com.